Hi there, Ron Schara here for Star Bank. If you're putting your money into mega banks down the street, who knows where that money's being used? It's time to make the switch. Bank locally. Keep your money local with a community bank that actually cares about you, your family, your business, and your goals. Let me give you some advice from personal experience. Check out the bank we use at Minnesota Bound. Try Minnesota's own Star Bank. You can find them online at starbank.net. When you call Star Bank, you actually hear a real living person answering the phone. Star Bank has 10 convenient locations around Minnesota to serve you and all the mobile banking products that you need to manage your money. From Maple Lake to Elbow Lake, Eagle Bend to Eden Prairie. Check out all that Star Bank has to offer at starbank.net.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Minnesota Bound podcast, the stories behind the stories. I am your host today, Laura Schara, along with my dad, Ron Schara, is joining me this afternoon. Hi, Dad. How are you doing?
Doing great, Laura. I'm looking forward to chatting with you about the stories behind the stories.
Yes, me too. Well, before we get there, we have to thank our sponsors, of course, because we wouldn't be here without them. Connecticut, North Dakota Tourism, and, of course, Star Bank. We thank you for your support for the Minnesota Bound podcast. All right, Dad, we're going to talk about something that's very important to you and, of course, also to me, since I grew up with you as my mentor. And we are going to talk about introducing kids to the great outdoors. And my first question for you is, why did you decide to end every single Minnesota Bound episode with that phrase, introduce a kid to the great outdoors?
Well, a couple reasons. One is, I enjoyed the outdoors. I was mystified by some of the experiences out there, the connection with nature, seeing critters do their thing beyond a zoo, meant a lot to me. So you want to share that. So I just came up with that saying to introduce a kid to the great outdoors because I think the kid would benefit from it. And there's some other reasons too, and that is the outdoors is an option to some of the, holding the phone in your hand or video games, blah, blah, blah. Not that there's anything bad about these, but I think there's better things about sitting in a tree, trying to hunt a deer, or in a boat, trying to wait for your bobber to go down, etc. The outdoors can also be can teach you lessons, among them patience, for example, fishing, and humility. Because if you go fishing enough, you're going to be humbled. More philosophical, Laura, was the idea that if we don't have the next generation of outdoor people coming up into the system who are going to buy hunting or fishing licenses, who care about the natural resources, we're going to lose them. This came clear to me years ago when there was a story about a farmer who accidentally let too much chemicals flow off his field, and it flowed into a trout stream, and there was a huge trout kill die-off there. Well, the only ones that really cared about that specifically were the trout fishermen, because they were the ones that were hurt. And oddly enough, they were the ones that reported it. So the lesson is, if you grow up and you don't give a damn about a trout stream, you're going to lose these trout streams and nobody's going to care. And we can't have that. So fishermen and hunters play a huge role in being guardians of natural places.
Absolutely. And, it's not just the trout stream. It trickles down to so many things besides that. And ultimately, a lot of it can even come down to clean drinking water, how many years down the line if we're not all aware of our environment and taking care of it, et cetera.
Oh, it starts right there. And you're right. And it starts with getting kids hooked on the outdoors, so to speak, and so that they care. For years, Pheasants Forever and other organizations have said, we need more pheasants. The pheasants are going away. We don't have enough grassland. Blah blah blah. And a lot of those things just fell on deaf ears. As I always said, you know, I don't want to pick on a housewife here, but if there was a housewife in Burnsville, she doesn't care about pheasants. She doesn't care if there's more pheasants. She's got other concerns. So it was only until the message went out that, hey, we need more grassland, because if we don't have more grassland on our farm fields, we're going to be polluting our water. We won't have clean water. The clean water is what resonated with the people in Burnsville. So suddenly they were as concerned about grasslands as a pheasant hunter was.
That's right. And that's, obviously one of the main reasons that like getting kids interested and passionate about, not only hunting or fishing, but just the outdoors in general, and having the curiosity of the world and how nature works and how it's all intertwined and connected is ultimately so important. And I, remember obviously growing up, having you as a dad and spending a lot of time in the outdoors. And I get a lot of questions from parents on how do you get your kids interested and keep them interested. And I know you have some good tips, and I do as well, just from my own experience. But what would you say are some of great tips for parents on how to get kids interested in the outdoors in general?
Well, trust me, I learned through air.
We can talk about that too.
I made a lot of mistakes with both you and your sister, such as keeping them out too long.
Yep,
Because
that was going
I
to be my
like to
tip.
fish. What?
That was going to be my tip as well. Maybe just monitor the hours.
I know, but yeah, and I did that with your sister Simone, and with you. But in your case, we would go bass fishing, but you always wanted to get a bass on a topwater lure, and I wanted very badly for you to fulfill those wishes. So I kept you out there, hoping that sooner or later some stupid bass is going to come up and take a surface lure from that you're casting, and it finally did. But I think you're exhausted. But the other lesson, you came out lucky when it came to my goal of introducing both my daughters to the Boundary Waters. That BWCA experience, canoeing, camping, cooking over the fire, listening to wolf howls, blah blah blah. Uh, so
I
I
remember it raining consistently for 6 days. So I don't know how much luck I had there, but I did.
well,
I didn't have the deer flies like my sister did.
your sister had deer flies, and we also went too long. And that was not my fault so much as I hired a guide. That's another good tip, though, for an experience like that. I hired a guide because he had all the equipment. He knew how to cook over a fire, and he knew things I didn't have to worry about, like where do we go next and where do we find campsites, etc. And so um, but the problem is, poor your sister, poor Simone. We bit off more than we could chew as far as the length of the trip. The black flies were bad, the wind was bad, etc. And of course, she said when it was all over, it was grueling too. She said, "That's it for me." I don't think she's even looked at a map of the Boundary Water since. So we
She
took too many
hasn't.
we took too many portages, blah blah blah. So when it was your turn, I also hired a guide, but I said, now we're taking one portage and we're going to stay there. And so this is what we did. So it made it easier. The black flies weren't around when you were there, but there were the Army tent worms were there. Remember?
Oh
They were
yes.
they were thick, marching up your tent ropes. And then I had you invited a girlfriend to go along, which is good. Simone did the same thing. But it did rain on you, and fishing was just kind of okay, as I recall. But do you remember what the guide told you about rain?
Yes, that it was liquid sunshine.
There you go. So that changes your attitude. So that was something else that was important to make bad times, or not even not bad times, but uncomfortable times. Try to turn them around into a better time. So the rain fell. He called it liquid sunshine. How can you argue about that?
Well, one of my memorable stories from the Boundary Waters is I indeed brought my best friend from seventh grade along. Her name was Brooke, and we were in the tent, and it was time to brush her teeth to go to bed. Well, the Boundary Waters doesn't have any lights, and nor did we have a light in our tent. So she started brushing her teeth, and so did I. And all of a sudden, she spit her toothpaste out directly into my face without knowing it. And the reason she did that is because she was brushing her teeth with bug itch cream by accident. True story. So she's never going to go back to the Boundary Waters again either.
I know.
But we had a good time, and I think those moments where you have you kind of have to endure some weather, and some moments are the ones that are the most memorable, of course. But it does teach you resilience and patience and humility and all those things. But as kids are younger, I think it is a really good point, is that you have to limit the time and let the kids almost tell you, when they've had enough. And even today, Dad, you are pretty good. Like, we go fishing in the boat, and you always say, you let me know when you've had enough, because we all know that you'll stay out there for 12 hours if you can. So I think that's a really good tip. Like, make sure it's fun, and also have patience. Kids aren't always going to be the greatest with a fishing pole, or they might break a fishing pole. I remember doing that once or twice maybe in your boat. And that's just going to happen, or they might lose it in the water, and really having patience so that their experience is a fun one. And then as they get older, it's really important, as you did, to bring us into certain environments that are a little tougher, because I think that helps with your development in being able to navigate the real world.
Well, exactly. One thing I learned after you and your sister had sort of grown up, I learned to, if I have a young person in the boat, say 5, 10, 12 years old, is to also bring some treats, maybe a little food, a pop or cold water or whatever, so that you make it. We're going to pause here and have a little treat, so it's not just all catching fish, because catching fish is important, but we all know that's just part of the experience. And yeah, you mentioned one other thing that slipped my mind now, but the that you can't expect an outdoor experience to always be smooth. And like you mentioned, they are not smooth, but you learn stuff. The kid learns stuff. They learn to maybe they can do things they didn't think they could do. Uh, they can they can live in the rain when they didn't think they could have. They don't have a house to run to, so they've got to adapt, and those are important lessons. Um, I'll never forget. I was doing a story on Outward Bound. That's a organization in Northeast Minnesota that would take kids, troubled kids from Chicago and other cities that were on the verge of being in trouble or were already in trouble with enforcement. And they were sent to Outward Bound to have nature teach them a few lessons about life, and that, as the guy said, they watch the mosquitoes bite their instructor just as much as they bite them, so they didn't feel that they were being picked on, etc. But so one of the things they did on the day I was up there is they were rappelling off of the cliffs overlooking the Lake Superior, and I'm standing up there with the coaches, and they're watching these kids one by one grab a rope, walk to the edge of the cliff. My gosh, some of those kids, their eyes were as big as silver dollars, and they were nervous, and I don't blame them. I looked down, and man, the waves were crashing in there, but they all did it, and they got down, and they made it. And so I'm standing there saying, "That's good. That's pretty nice. That's pretty." All the lessons they're learning here. And the coach says to me, he says, "Now it's your turn." I go, "What? What?" But
And did you do it?
I did it, and I had the same feeling when I did it as those kids. That was something that I didn't think I could do. I didn't want to do, but I was asked to do it, and I had to step up to the plate, and I did it, and that's a great feeling.
Absolutely. And I think, you mentioned about kids being able to survive in the rain and be in the outdoor elements. And I think part of the comfort and joy of being in the outdoors when you hit elements that aren't so nice per se is having the right gear. So, making sure that you have the right shoes and socks and rain gear for kids to keep them dry in those elements so they can continue to have fun while they're fishing, or keeping their hands warm, or having layers for kids. And a lot of times, you may not think of that when you're going out, that it might rain, but those little things make a big difference from being comfortable to having a miserable time. Don't you think?
That's a good point, Laura. And another one I want to throw in here is because so let's say a youngster is going to learn to hunt, and in some cases, the first thing they need to do is, besides gun safety and all of those things, is they need to understand that they owe it to the animal to be as skilled with their weapons as they possibly can be. Because I think I've known some, I'll say, fathers here that have taken their sons bow hunting for deer because they like to, and the son is maybe 10, 11, 12, and hasn't practiced enough with that bow. Um, Now you're putting the child in a position of failure. Worse than that, you're 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 putting that child into the chance of wounding a deer. No hunter ever wants to do that, but it happens because they didn't hone their skills, and they got rushed into tagging along with dad. I see that occasionally. That's an awful thing to do. So if you're going to hunt pheasants, if you're going to hunt ducks, if you're going to shoot deer with a bow, shoot deer with a rifle, you owe it to the critters to practice your marksmanship skills as best you can. It doesn't mean you're not going to always cripple a deer or a pheasant or whatever, but you've put in your time to try to avoid that.
Totally. That's a great point. And I think that also applies to fishing, not with necessarily wounding a fish at all, but just with having success on the water with your casting skills. And I always share this story with, when I do some speaking engagements and things, and how you used to set up a game in the backyard with hula hoops that were laid down in the grass, and we would practice our casting skills with a plug on the end of the line and try to get the plug in the hula hoop. And we'd change the distance, and it would turn into this little game. And that was one of the best things you could have done for me personally as far as my fishing skill, because that has helped me tremendously to this day with my casting abilities. And when you can cast accurately and well, your fishing ability to catch fish increases. So I have to thank you for that one.
Well, thank you. I remember that fondly, and hate to tell you this, but your dad still goes out in the driveway and does that once in a while, especially in March when I've got the fishing urge and it's still too cold. So, and the lakes are full of ice. But yeah, nothing beats improving your skills. That includes knot tying. I love to tie a knot, so I learn new knots, practice casting skills, things like that. Now, it all adds to the enjoyment of the experience for sure.
Yeah, and I think another thing that you did well, and I don't think I've ever told you this in the past, but a lot of times when we're out walking a field and and if we're turkey hunting out in the woods, or if we're pheasant hunting and we're walking a field, is you also take time to share information about the environment or other animals that are out there, about plants that we see, and things that obviously you have studied and so you have the information to share. But I always found that really that increased my experience and the enjoyment I got out of being outdoors, is learning so much about how it's all interwoven and intertwined together. And I always really appreciated when you would share even information. We saw one time, I remember, I think a raccoon popped up behind a log and was staring at us. And if I remember correctly, you said they're related to the bear family somehow. Is that correct?
Yes, they are.
Yes, I remember that. And that was years and years and years ago. And I remember you telling me that. We were standing there. I was like, I didn't know that. And I thought that was really cool. So having extra, information in your back pocket when you're going out, if you're talking about lily pads or dragonflies, there's so much information about dragonflies that, kids would love to learn. That's also helpful in the experience.
Well, part of my urge to share those things with you and your sister was when I was at Iowa State University taking up fish and wildlife biology, by the way, which helped me tremendously. But I'll never forget a field trip we took one morning in my ornithology class, and it was a beautiful morning, and the sun was just hitting the treetops, and my my instructor, my professor said, "Oh, look, there's a rose-breasted grosbeak," and it was just sitting there beautiful in the sunshine. We all had binoculars. I go, "Oh my gosh, that's a beautiful bird, absolutely beautiful bird." And then he said, "Yes, they're native." I go, "Oh my Lord, I'm 20 some years old and I have been around rose-breasted grosbeaks for 20 some years, and this is the first one I've ever noticed." And that was a big lesson for me that uh, we have to stay aware of our surroundings, because there's so much there. If you're not aware, there's so much more you're missing. So that was a lesson that I try to pass on to you and your sister.
No, well, I appreciate it. I know my sister Simone does too, with all that you've taught us over the years, for sure. And before we move on here, we can't forget to thank our sponsor, Connecticut Water, which you and I both know very well. We are users of Connecticut Water, and I personally am a big fan of drinking Connecticut Water just because of all the additives that they get rid of, and it's purified drinking water, and it tastes so good.
Well, you're right there. My experience with Connecticut even starts at our home, um, and you weren't there very long. But when we first moved there, we had iron in the water. I can't tell you what it smelled like, but it was awful. And we had a different kind of water softener in their system, but didn't seem to take care of that. And one way or another, I ran into Connecticut. Um, Put it in our home, and let me tell you, I can't tell you just how wonderful Connecticut got rid of the iron in the water, got rid of the bad taste, and as you mentioned, all the other things they take out. Plus, Connecticut uses very little salt and doesn't run on any electricity. It's almost magical. So I'm a big fan of Connecticut, as you are.
I am too. I love the fact that you're not using plastic water bottles, and it's helping the environment just because you can get such purified drinking water just from the faucet itself and not have to waste any more plastic waste in our environment. And I appreciate you taking the iron out of our water, because that will turn blonde hair orange. So I didn't realize we had so much iron in the water back when I grew up there. So thanks,
Well,
Dad. Also, this fall, you can be legendary hunting in North Dakota at legendarynd.com. And Dad, you have a lot of fond North Dakota hunting stories. Yes?
North Dakota is a great state to hunt in. Lots of open air, open land, landowners that are willing to let you hunt. Also, a lot of public land. And this year, I'm told, this fall, North Dakota's pheasant count is on the rise, and so are the duck count. So it should be a good autumn.
Yeah, they actually gave me some data here. They're saying the ringneck pheasant crowing count is up 15% in 2020. So that's significant.
It is very much so. But you got to go anyway. You never know. But there's always birds to hunt in North Dakota.
That's right. So you can experience world-class hunting in North Dakota. Visit legendarynd.com.
Well, Laura, I think I've told you everything I know.
You have? Well, I have another question for you, a really quick one. And I have parents come up to me a lot, and they might be single moms or parents that aren't necessarily haven't been raised in the hunting and fishing world, and they want to know, where can they take their kids to learn if they don't know how to do this skill themselves? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, that is a good question. Our many state DNRs have hunter introduction programs. Um, Often, if you have another neighbor family that are friends that do hunt, most of them are eager to uh, take somebody under their wing and show them some basic, slowly introduce them to hunting. I certainly wouldn't start off with an elk hunt in Colorado, but maybe a squirrel hunt in the local woods with a single shot 22, which also not only teaches you marksmanship. Squirrels are a tremendous game animal. They're good eating. You'll learn how to clean them in the field, and learn to use your hunting skills, so to speak. But it's an issue. But I would start off with maybe going to a shotgun range, sporting clays, trap shooting, and kind of let them feel the excitement of hitting a clay bird in the air, and maybe one thing will lead to another.
That's right. And I know that the Minnesota DNR, they have a great website that has a list of fishing guides. And I'm a big fan of hiring fishing guides. Even today, even though I've had lots of fishing trips, I still love hiring fishing guides because they are such experts in their own backyard on where the fish are, when they're biting, when they're not. And it just makes the trip so much fun to have to go out with a fishing guide. So I know the Minnesota DNR is a great spot, and even on Minnesota Bound or mnbound.com/get it local, you can find the list, and it'll connect you right to the DNR there. So that's also a great resource.
Good advice, Laura.
All right, Dad. Well, thank you for introducing me to the great outdoors. I owe a lot to you for that, and I know my sister appreciates it as well. And Bill and I continue to say that phrase every time we depart from Minnesota Bound episodes today in your honor.
Well, you can always send money if you want to.
Well, wait a minute now.
Well, I'm glad you and Bill continue using the sign off. Be sure to introduce the kid to the great outdoors. That's an important message.
Sure is. Absolutely. All right, we want to thank our sponsors one more time for sponsoring the Minnesota Bound podcast, The Stories Behind the Stories. We thank you for your support to North Dakota Tourism, Connecticut, and also to Star Bank.